I'm Doug Daugherty, president of Hamilton Flourishing, and we're so glad you've joined us as we continue our journey down Candidate Row. Today we're talking to Darrin Ledford of District 4 City Council. There are a whole bunch of people running. The election, again, is March 2nd. They're electing all 9 council seats and a mayor, and lots of people running for mayor. I do want to tell you that voter registration ends Monday, February the 1st. Early voting will begin February the 10th and ends on February the 25th. So if you're not registered to vote and you hear this in time, you can register to vote. And one way you can do that, if you go to hamiltonflourishing.org, our website, it'll take you to a link that the government of Tennessee runs that allows you to register to vote. And you can also, if you don't know what district you're in, you can go on and find a similar link that'll tell you what district you're in so you'll know who to listen to. And on the same website, hamiltonflourishing.org, you'll see a picture of all the people that are running, except for a few that we couldn't find one. And it's connected to either their Facebook or their website or both if they have them. And also these interviews will be attached to them. So you'll get a complete kind of picture of where the candidate is, where they're from, what they do, and so we hope this will be a service to you. But today we're talking to Darrin Ledford from District 4. And Darrin, welcome. Thank you for coming by.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Darrin. Are you a native Chattanooga?
Well, I am a first-generation college student. I was very honored to go to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, where I graduated. And shortly after that, started my lifelong dream of owning my own business.
Yeah.
And I've now, almost 25 years later, we have our printing company that's been going strong, and we're very grateful and love being in this city. And I don't know where else I would ever be.
So you're a small business owner. Understand the challenges of small business.
I've seen the ups, and Doug, I've seen the downs. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, small business is where all the new jobs are created. So I think it's great. Let's see. What do you like to do? So you've got children?
I have a son, Zachary, who's 11.
Oh, tell everybody the story about your son. I think it is so swell.
So my son is a Lego fanatic, and he's also very involved in theater at his school. But his love of Legos lent him to an idea that he came to us, and he invented the backdrops for Lego sets. So when you're looking at a box, for example, and you see that the Lego set is set against this really neat background, which is a marketing tool, you go, well, where can I get that environment? Well, Zachary came up with the idea, brought it to us through our printing company, and helping him, we devised this backdrops, sets and scenes that go with lots of minifigures and Legos. It's really quite ingenious, and we found out after a lot of research, even Lego contacted us. We found out after a lot of research, Doug, that nothing like that exists. So year working through patents and the legal hurdles, if you will, has products on Amazon.
Isn't that amazing? How old is that Zachary when
he
started
it when he was 9. He's now 11, and he'll be 12 this month, or February.
A budding entrepreneur in your family. That's incredible. Tell us about District 4. Where is it? And if you can tell us the precincts it's in, but
sure.
What does it cover? What part of Chattanooga?
So when you think of East Brainerd, this District 4, it is the East Brainerd area, which is Hamilton Place area. Mm-hmm. So you go south to the Georgia line. You go up to where the Bonnie Oaks exit, U.S. Express headquarters, kind of think of it like that. Run along east, run along to Summit area, going up all the way to Volkswagen, believe it or not. The Summit Complex, which is off Appleton Pike, is actually in District 4. So it's a pretty big district. It's the easternmost part of the city that touches Georgia on the southern line and the county on the eastern line.
Okay. Now, how long have you been? You're an incumbent, so you've been serving how long?
I'm in my first term.
Your first term. So you've been there 4 years.
Yes, sir.
Tell us how these 4 years have better prepared you to serve another 4 years.
Sure. That's a really good question, because I can honestly say I'm not the same person I was 4 years ago. And I think that is extremely important when serving as an elected official. Folks come into it with an idea of goals that they may want to accomplish. This has been an incredible experience that I would never change or for anything, because it has allowed me to see the city through an entirely new set of eyes. I've gotten to work with 8 other incredible people on council who have different backgrounds, temperaments, talents, and convictions, and we've been able to bring together a camaraderie on council that a lot of elected officials have noticed and asked, how do we replicate that camaraderie? And it's because we listen. We work hard. We understand, like I understand more about the other districts and what their challenges are. And one of the things that we do, I think, is so incredible, pre-COVID obviously, is the ability to share meals together, because we're in the council building all day on Tuesdays and we are able to share meals. Well, when you do that, we become a family, and we start sharing stories with each other. We start understanding what it's like to live in other districts. I've lived technically in my lifetime several of the districts, and I've been in East Brainerd for a long time now. And it's incredible, because the experience that you get through that conversation also takes you down different paths when it comes to how our government works and what the priorities are and some of our responsibilities. And being able to come back into your district, listen to what the citizens have to say and your constituents, and then working together with council. Because the thing to realize, Doug, is it takes 5 votes to get something accomplished in council. We do not operate in a silo. That's the other side of the building, as we like to say, over in the 3rd floor. We don't operate like that. So the ability to work with others and learn from others and to build consensus is something I'm extremely grateful for.
So you've been sitting in your chair in the city council for 4 years. You've lived in Chattanooga most of your life, and accurate, and you've been to school here, and you've grown a business here. Tell me what you think now of Chattanooga, and these 2 questions kind of go together. What do you really think about the city? What's the truth about the city? And then the second question is, are we going in the right direction? Where should we be? And then that leads to the question of where should we be going for the next 4 years?
That's a pretty broad question.
It is a broad question. I'm kind of looking to say, okay, this is what I think about where we are as a city, and this is where we're going.
So,
or where I want us to go.
I think that our city, we all need to realize, is not only evolving, but it is constantly changing. If you look at the demographics and you look at the amount of people and the type of jobs that are being created in today's economy, you will see that we have a lot of different influences that come into the city that are different even from 10, 20 years ago. The internet, the gig, all this has changed the way work is done. COVID has now changed that as well, the ability to work from home. I never knew before taking this position how many people worked for companies that weren't even located in Tennessee, let alone Chattanooga. And it's been fascinating to see what technology has done for our city. I think that we have a lot of issues that need addressing. What I want to see, and you ask about direction, what I want to see is more of what this past council, and I look forward to whoever's coming back, and also who wins in the races that chose not to come back. But I want to maintain, and it's very important to me, and when I first was elected, I did blogs on this, was building that relationship. I don't think we have enough of that. We need more of it. And that relationship leads to conversations, and that leads to common goals. Because I don't look at the problems or the issues in our city as political issues. I look at them as Chattanooga issues and human issues. And I think that the more conversation we have, the more understanding we have, and the more we can collaborate on finding solutions that work for everyone.
I was talking to another city councilman, and they said he had come to the point that he had believed that there really were sort of two Chattanoogas.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And that that this notion of we got to serve both sides of the plate, you know. So we were talking about public transportation
Right.
and things like that. So that's kind of part of that question.
Mm-hmm.
So you are also, besides your seat on the city council, you are also is it the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Committee?
So through the city council, I am the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Committee, which oversees every zoning request or change in the city of Chattanooga. That also puts me on the Chattanooga-Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission as a planning commissioner.
Wow.
So I wear two hats in that respect. So I have influence and collaboration, if you will, on every zoning case that comes before the county and the city.
Well, one of the questions is later, but I'd like to go ahead and ask it now after I've brought this up, is what's your deal about the whole affordable housing issue?
Affordable housing issue, in what regard?
I mean, do you think we need, can the city do anything to make more housing available to people with less means?
So the city does have tools that we use on a regular basis to encourage affordable housing. And I think it's important also to define what affordable housing is, because at council, it depends on who's presenting a situation to us, whether it's in the form of a pilot, let's say, as one of the tools, and how and what affordable. I mean, if you're using the AMI, the Chattanooga's AMI to define that, then we know what we're talking about. There's also terms like the adjusted medium income.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's that number comes into play when we're talking about affordable housing. And then we have workforce housing. So it's interesting that, you know, in what respect we're talking about. But should affordable housing, is the need there? Absolutely. There's tremendous need for housing all across the board. I'll be in a meeting later today talking about housing in general and the shortage of stock that we have in the city. Mm-hmm. So affordable housing is something that, again, going back to what I said earlier, I've been able to learn more about in the last 4 years, and it is very important that we look at these issues and these problems, especially that, together. And that's a human issue, and we need more focus on that, finding those solutions together.
Sort of philosophically, changing gears just a little bit, where are you about just the role of government in a community? Do you see government as more of a hands-on, involved, engaged, and as deeply as they can get, or do you see more hands-off, let the private sectors or the nonprofit sectors do their work, and, you know, we'll provide the safety net that's needed, but let the other sectors take a whack at it? Like the housing is a good example. You can provide incentives or you can build them yourself. That's two different philosophies.
So I'm not a big fan of big government, Doug. I will tell you. I think the smaller the government, the better. I do believe in the ability of the private sector and people in general to bring solutions.
Well, look at your son.
Yeah, exactly, my son. I don't know where he got that from, but I don't think expansion of government is our answer. I think that limiting government, more regulations is not the answer. I would prefer government to be smaller and let our nonprofits do what our nonprofits do, let our private sector. I am and have worked in some private-public partnerships where the private sector has brought to the table more efficient solutions. I do think there are a lot of hardworking people in the city of Chattanooga. I know them. I've worked side by side with them in our public works department, for example. Just as one example, after the tornado which hit my district, the work that the public works department did for the citizens of East Brainerd was incredible. That was the most incredible organized effort, and I was on the ground with them and going and watching what they were doing, the commitment. The city really stepped up on that, and I think that's where government, comes into play the best is doing things for us that we can't do for ourselves, such as in that example. And I'm very grateful for what the city and the departments did for us during the tornado, and they're still working through. But I don't believe that growing the size of government to solve our problems is ever a good idea.
Okay. Now, this is a little bit different question. What would be your top 3 to 5 issues for you in this that you see coming up?
Well, we have a huge unknown hurdle with COVID related when it comes to our budget and revenue.
Explain that just a little bit.
Well, you know, we're driven by property taxes and sales taxes in the city for revenue. We're going to see impacts. Revenue is down. It's in a pretty good spot. I will give our CFO a tremendous amount of credit for maintaining a very conservative type mentality by taking action ahead of the COVID impact that I think has really helped us.
Are there any laws in place that are going to, you may not know this, but I mean, I know that sales taxes will be affected because there's not as much retail business going on locally. I mean, restaurants are not opening and things like that. But does it affect property taxes?
Property taxes, well, what you're going to have with the property tax collection is maybe the ability to pay your property taxes. And there's a lot of people who have come through COVID with a certain degree of assurance, and there's a lot of people that have not. And that ability to pay your property taxes is, we're going to find out.
We're going to find out. So there's some uncertainty as to whether all the property owners will be able to actually even pay their property tax.
I think that's a good question, and it's going to have an impact on what our budget looks like.
Yeah, and you really won't know until May 28th. That's number 1, COVID-related budget issues. What would be some of the other issues that you think coming up?
I think priorities for the mayor, the new mayor coming in. This council over the last 4 years has laid out several challenges as far as priorities, from mechanical topics to social issues. And I think that finding and prioritizing our budget is extremely important in this crossroads of time, and will set the course from where we go forward.
Okay. Now, you're one of the few people who's running that actually is familiar with the budget. I mean,
Correct.
You work with it all the time, so that's an advantage, I would think, to you. What would be a third issue, you would think?
I think a third issue is how we, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but how we engage with each other, Doug. I think that it's a mentality, it's a spirit of heart, it's a spirit of community. I think that with COVID and with social unrest that we have witnessed, I think that now is the time for all of us to embrace what is important and family values. I think it's important that we look at our neighbors and we really take a deep dive into what we can do to be part of solutions and not continuing problems.
Good answer. Now, is there anything that you're going to be waving the flag on when you get in there and say, hey guys, pay attention, this is really important?
Well, there's several things, and a lot of that, as I said, the experience and collaboration with my colleagues and the utmost respect for differing opinions has taught me and hopefully made me a better elected official, because I think that's important to have that perspective. But as planning and zoning chairman, we're addressing several issues right now. I have legislation that's being looked at right now regarding development standards that the public has asked for us to look at. That has been.
You're looking at the steep slope thing.
We're looking at steep slopes. We're looking at a vegetation component, which is important right now, because I've actually, along with some collaborators, introduced legislation that's never been done before. There are no peer studies on it from other cities. It's bold, but it has a lot of buy-in from people who build homes and then also conservationists. And what I was able to do on that was, it's funny because pre-COVID, they were sitting on opposite sides of the room. And just, nobody gets everything that they want. Let's be realistic when it comes to life. But by the time this came in its rough form, which it's at now, getting ready to go into ordinance, I have the two sides going to lunch, or pre-COVID, going to lunch and sitting next to each other. And that's the consensus that I was talking about earlier, is realistic expectations when addressing problems, and not being afraid to provide a bold solution. And this vegetation component, when dealing with steep slopes development, is something that we do not have in this city or can be found anywhere else. But I worked with several different types of industries, and we found something in a formula that I think will benefit the city and may actually be a model for other cities to follow, which I love the idea of Chattanooga leading the way on something like that.
That's exciting. Jobs are very important. We need to have a continued robust economy. Everything depends on. If we don't have jobs, people, they leave or they get poor or something bad happens to them. But what do you see in terms of what can the city council do in terms of economic growth, helping create jobs readiness, and that sort of thing?
Sure. One of the primary duties of city council that some people don't really realize is that when you're talking about the jobs creation and the recruiting of business, well, that really falls to the mayor's office.
Okay.
That's not a daily city council.
Okay.
What does fall to us is support of businesses that want to come here, and through that we can influence that attraction through zoning. That's one of the primary responsibilities of council. Outside of the budget, most people don't realize it, outside of the budget, zoning belongs to the city council. And that through zoning, which helps identify a location, whether it's appropriate or not, because you want to protect your residential areas, you want to be smart in development. The thing that's interesting, is most people don't think about this, Doug, is that back in 2015, March, forced annexation was eliminated by the state. And we have our Hamilton County delegation responsible for that. And that means that the city can no longer just annex property to acquire revenue. So way I looked at that 4 years ago was intensely, we have hit a proverbial wall for attracting new land and revenue. So we have to then turn around and look inward. And if we're going to maintain, like say our fire department's rated number 1, they have an ISO rating of 1. We just did our fire ops on Saturday, and we're got a complete update on the importance of fire. Our police department out there protecting our citizens. And what you've got to understand is that when it comes to development, we have to develop. We have to develop, Doug, or property tax increases are on the menu for the next mayor to present. And I think that before that option ever is presented, we need a hard look at the budget, a very hard look at the budget, and find the issues that we can address.
Okay, let me
Does that
move
make
on.
sense?
Yeah, it makes great sense.
Yeah, sorry.
What do you see do you see a role for churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples to play as people to deliver some of the services and the needs of the community? Do you see them as partners with the city in some ways?
They're already doing it, Doug. They're a critical part of the infrastructure already. Let's say, for example, let's take, I won't name any churches on the air, but I know in talking to the heads of certain religious institutions, I have learned over the last 4 years how much they give back to the community, from even housing folks off the street, feeding them, providing assistance in rent and utilities so that they don't fall behind. I mean, they're doing that work, and without them doing that work, our nonprofits and our religious institutions, Doug, it's incredible what they do for our community.
I studied this at one time, that every homeless shelter in Chattanooga was started in a church and has grown out of churches.
I have
there
no
wasn't they going back.
I have no doubt.
Going back to the Civil War and on. I mean, they were the ones who were taking care of the people who didn't have a
Chattanoogans are amazing people.
place to sleep.
Yes.
Race has been a big deal this last 6 months. Looking at the census data, Chattanooga is 62% white, 31% black, 6% Hispanic. And the word equity has come out, and the whole claims of white racism, systemic white racism, and things like that. And some of this is accurate in the sense that institutions, whether they knew it or not, they just were favoring one group versus another group. And how do you respond to that? Because the government has been pulled into it, and especially in the policing thing, was really getting pushed to address that. And we're going to talk about the policing thing in a little bit, but I mean, how do you view that as a lawmaker?
So let me go back to 4 years ago when I took office. I kind of alluded to this. I was put in with a group of folks that different backgrounds, like I said, different temperaments, talents, and convictions, different experiences. So one of the things that I think is important, what we learn from each other, and that goes back to the conversation, that goes back to listening. And one of the things that we recently, as a council together, engaged in was with GARE training. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's
what
government
training?
GARE, Government Alliance on
Oh,
Racial Equity.
okay.
So we went through that training together as a council, and it was interesting and enlightening because we had some really open dialogue and being able to understand, or like I said, one of the most important things about this job and working with other representatives from the districts is being able to look and feel things through their eyes and their experiences. I've experienced things they haven't experienced. They've experienced things that I never have experienced and never could comprehend. And through that understanding, Doug, is where we're going to be better people going forward.
Okay. I do want to ask you this question. There was a move to make the city police more accountable to an outside community board and to reallocate funds from the Chattanooga Police Department to non-police budget items. Was that something you were in favor of?
Are you talking about the amendment that failed?
Yes, yeah. Well, that's something that you would, what was your opinion on that?
Oh, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I thought that was a horrible idea.
Yeah, okay.
And that's a whole other 2-hour conversation.
It is a good 2-hour conversation. Maybe not a good 2-hour conversation, but it's a good conversation. We have a supermajority of Republicans in the state legislature, and this question has come up, and people have asked me to ask it. It's very likely that they will pass a late-term pro-life bill that will protect babies in the later terms of later parts of gestation. So, in other parts of the country, cities and counties, when they've done this sort of thing, have said, we're going to be a sanctuary city. We're not going to enforce the law. If the state passes something that's more restrictive in the area of abortion, would you support the state, or would you be an advocate for not supporting the state?
Well, I think that would come down to a personal belief issue.
Okay.
Because in certain situations, even though we are a home rule charter, in certain situations, and that would probably fall in that category, the state would trump the city anyways. So I think that would come down, for me and my family, a personal belief or a personal.
Well, the only reason people have asked me is because take my immigration, there were sanctuary cities when the federal law said one thing, the city said, we're not going to enforce the law. So
correct.
It's that's what puts that on the table. Do you believe the current city administration, county and state administration have handled the response to COVID well, or could it be improved upon?
Three different departments there. Many perspectives. One, from the city, let's take the city. I think the city has taken steps that they felt they needed to take. again, what people need to understand is the separation between the executive branch of government and the legislative branch of government. When the mayor signs an executive order, then mayor signs an executive order. And we're there to try and support our constituency. We're trying there to support our city. When the state hands down a mandate, then that, a lot of times will trump, obviously, the city, because that's the hierarchy of how the powers are separated. In response, I think how anybody has responded to this has been, we'll know, I guess, a little bit further down the road, Doug. I mean, this is an organic, moving problem that have varying opinions. We've seen different approaches. I think that education on personal safety and taking this threat, if you're talking about COVID, I think has been very serious. I mean, I think we need to treat it very seriously. I mean, I've had friends who've died from it, and very good friends, and it is a very serious issue. And I think anything we can do as a group to keep those people safe, or do our part even if it's a little inconvenient, I think is definitely part of a much bigger picture. And when you try to separate it out, we're given information. I will tell you this. So my wife and I have taken on data as a project in our house when related to COVID. And it's interesting because we're not one to just take everything we hear from the media and take it to heart and go, well, I guess that's the truth. I ask a lot of questions. I always have. And I understand that there are always reasons that you may only get pieces of information. So I like to dig deeper. I like alternate sources. I like to check my facts. And it's been interesting because we've had some questions about some of the information that's been provided to us, and how sometimes I feel like the whole story is not maybe being told for maybe an end reason. I don't know. What I do know is that it's real. What I know is that it's impacted families that I know. I know we've lost friends. We take it seriously, and I think if there's anything that we can do to help us get to the next stage past it, then we should be doing that.
Okay. Just a couple more questions. Shootings have been a big problem.
Yes.
Drive-by shootings and
Yep.
random shootings. A few months ago, there were 3 children involved in
Yes.
a targeted shooting, according to the news report.
Yes.
Must have been some kind of revenge thing or something. I don't know. But the violence in Chattanooga has, I was surprised doing research into the FBI statistics on violence that Chattanooga has a really high rating in terms of violence. What do you think about the shootings? I mean, is there anything that we can do? It's really not a policing problem. I mean, you can't get a policeman there to get in front of every bullet. I mean, or shoot the bad guy before he does a drive-by shooting. I mean, so how do you
Well,
look
I'll tell you what
at
we
it?
don't do, Doug.
What?
We don't defund the police. That's the first thing we don't do.
Yeah. Neighborhoods need to feel safe.
Even that narrative is starting to wane in certain segments of the political world, because it's been realized that's not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a horrible idea. Mm-hmm. You're correct, and how we're addressing it. But the answer is not to defund. The answer is to provide priority, and in those situations through funding and mechanisms that are proven to work. You're right. The numbers are up.
Well, I mean, as a tourist city, to me, it's where I live. We don't have a lot of shootings, but if I was a downtown person, I would be more concerned about. I mean, we've had shootings on the Walnut Street Bridge and things like that. I mean, so it's a. I mean, I would think as a city father, which you are, you're one of the city fathers. I mean, that would be a big concern.
It's a huge concern, and a lot of it, if you trace, and I will not pretend to be an expert in this field, but I'll tell you what I have learned is the age group that it begins. And right now, we can even go back to talking about how COVID's going to impact that. We have a moral responsibility, in my opinion, to do everything we can for our children, to keep them away from the influences and to provide opportunities. I know I have good friends who have children. I got one particular friend with several young men in his house that, for example, I've watched grow up. I have a lot of friends with kids, and I think that as a community, we could always do more, Doug, by stepping up our commitment. Now, what kind of gets me as an elected official at times is people want to criticize you, get on social media, and their thumbs do the work for them. And I look at those people and I go, wow, well, how about we work together? How about you come with a solution? How about you get involved with a local boys club or girls club? I mean, let's quit throwing that always at the feet of government. We talked about government a little while ago, but I think the power in that is in the community.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see us ramp that effort up tremendously.
I couldn't agree more. Let's see. That's all the questions that I have. Any last words?
Chattanooga's at a really critical point and a crossroads, as I stated earlier. I think experience on council is needed more now than ever within change in administration. My relationships, my ability, being in this town for so many decades, and my experience on council, I think, is going to play an important role in moving us forward. I've established relationships and know a lot of the mayoral candidates, and we've had a lot of in-depth conversations. I think that is really important when people look at who they're voting for and look at where we're going next. I think that for voters, Doug, choosing a mayoral candidate or city council representative, they need to look at their experience and look at what they have been advocating for, and are they listening to the community. But when it comes to the mayoral candidacy, they need to pick the candidate who has their priorities and will state those priorities. One of the critical parts in this next step for Chattanooga city government is a partnership between council and the mayor's office, something that I do not feel has been strong enough. And when I say that, I mean the mayor and the council working together in partnership, in unison, in addressing our problems openly, publicly. And I think that is something that we've missed, and something that I've missed in the last 4 years that I wish we had more of. And I think that's very important. And also voting. Doug, traditionally, in city elections, we have very low voter turnout.
Yeah, it's not. It's
People need to vote, and they need to check out the mayoral candidates and their council reps and find out what values and what experience they bring to the job.
And Darrin, that's a great segue, because if you go to hamiltonflourishing.org, there's a one-stop shop of place where everybody's running for office. It's their picture, a link to their website or their Facebook page, and an interview with them like we're doing right now. When we have those, the questionnaire we use is posted as well. You can follow that. We ask pretty much the same questions to everybody, and you can register to vote there, and you can find out what council district you're in there. So we'd encourage you, if you're watching this, and then you can use these videos. If you have friends, you can send them the links to them, and they can watch them, and we do that. So that's at hamiltonflourishing.org, and up on the screen during our interview has been how to reach Darrin at his website, and it's what is your website, Darrin?
DarrinLedford.com. It's a difficult one to remember, Doug.
I can't see that far, is my problem. Well, Darrin, thank you a lot for being here.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
Best wishes to you. Hope everything goes well. And thank you today for watching Hamilton Flourishing.